Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. U.S. President Bush recently announced that 8,000 American troops will be withdrawn from Iraq by next February. U.S. military commanders on the ground feel confident that they have turned a corner in Iraq. Both the U.S. and Iraq are envisaging a total U.S. troop withdrawal by 2011. But there are still many factors of insecurity. Armed militias among the Sunni and Shia communities, Kurdish Peshmerga fighters, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, as well as a host of unresolved political and territorial dispute. So is it too early to talk of a U.S. troop withdrawal? Or is this a realization that military occupation must come to an end no matter what the cost?
General Petraeus has just completed a review of the situation in Iraq. And he and the Joint Chiefs of Staff have recommended that we move forward with additional force reductions, and I agree.
In what perhaps is his last major move on troop strategy in Iraq, President Bush announced the withdrawal of 8,000 U.S. soldiers by February next year. The announcement drew heavy fire from opponents of the war who claim the number is too small to make a difference. They say the U.S. force in Iraq will largely be intact until the next president takes over. According to American and Iraqi officials, under a draft deal being negotiated, U.S. troops will pull out of cities across Iraq by June next year and will be completely withdrawn by 2011. But critics insist the sudden change of heart on a drawdown date was simply to ease political pressure in both Iraq and the U.S. In reality, they say the actual date is still tentative and remains an aspirational timeline. Many observers believe, although there is relative calm and a newfound confidence in the Iraqi security forces, the situation in Iraq remains fragile, especially with the current discord among political factions.
There are quite large gaps in the Iraqi armed forces, which only the Americans and coalition forces can fill, such as the logistics, strategic intelligence, air, transport, and the like. And to withdraw those very quickly would leave the Iraqi armed forces in a very poor and incapable state.
The status of forces agreement is critical as it will decide the future of U.S. forces in Iraq once the present UN mandate expires in December this year. Observers say the U.S. position is clear. It will only withdraw if conditions on the ground are favorable to its interests, citing key unresolved issues such as immunity for American soldiers and the number of bases in Iraq. So, are these conditional negotiations the American way of pushing for a long-term military presence in Iraq?
I think they are keen to keep some sort of force there. How many bases in Iraq? Could be 4, could be 44. I've heard all sorts of numbers bandied about. But the fact is, the Americans are not going to leave in a hurry.
The Iraqi government, on the other hand, appears caught in a catch-22 situation. Although they are eager to have a timetable for the withdrawal, they are also fully aware that any hasty troop drawdown may reignite fresh sectarian violence in the country and destabilize the region.
To discuss the implications of the U.S. troop withdrawal from Iraq, I'm joined from Kansas City by Robert Gard, Senior Military Fellow of the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation, and from London by former General Al-Samaarai, Iraqi military affairs expert, and from Beirut by author and military affairs expert Brigadier General Ilyas Hanna. Welcome to Inside Iraq. General Gard, let me start with you. How do you look at the minuscule number of U.S. troop withdrawal, only 8,000 out of 146,000? Does that betray a lack of confidence in the security gains so far?
Well, what it conveys is the Bush administration's continuing commitment to maintaining the force levels even after that withdrawal at a level higher than before the troop surge that began with the announcement in January 2007. The Marine Battalion coming out of Anbar was part of that troop surge, and you will have one Army brigade that will rotate out of Iraq and not be replaced. The replacement brigade will go to Afghanistan. But to get to your question, I would say yes, it reveals the uncertainty with the situation and the view of the commander, General Petraeus, that the gains that are made are are reversible and fragile.
Elias Hanna, when Petraeus says the gains are not only fragile but not unreversible, does that give you confidence that the beginning of the withdrawal has started, or simply this could be for domestic political U.S. reasons, the elections?
I think that there is two main reasons for the withdrawal of 8,000 troops. First, there is a need, an urgent need for more troops in Afghanistan because the situation there is deteriorating. The second point is you have to take it within the political context in the United States. We know that the nominee, Senator McCain, has backed this surge, and now they are in the process of, the coming elections. So it means that this is like to say that McCain was right, that the surge has worked. But Petraeus is anxious because you have to put the Iraqi situation within the political situation, within the regional and geopolitical context, and you have to add one more complexity to this situation, what happened in Georgia.
Wafiq Al-Samaarai, you are not only a full Iraqi general, you were until the old regime, you were the chief of Iraqi military intelligence. You know Iraq perhaps better than anybody else, especially in the military domain. Look at Iraq and tell me, out of the 5 following reasons that I will give you for the security improvement, which contributed most? First, was it the surge? Second, was it As-Sahwa? Third, was it the ceasefire by Muqtada al-Sadr? Fourth, was it the standing up of the Iraqi army? And fifth, whether one sect dominated Baghdad at the expense of the other, so there isn't much ethnic cleansing to be done. Which of these 5 contributed to the security in Iraq?
The first 4 factors largely contributed to the level of violence, namely the surge in the number of troops, which was very substantial, followed by the surge in the security personnel in Iraq and the popular uprising targeting the death squads, which were all decisive factors. All these 4 factors combined contributed to declining the level of violence, and eventually the new strategy by the United States had a direct impact on the course of events. In other words, without the new strategy by the United States, the armed militias in Iraq wouldn't have been addressed properly, nor were the awakening councils came to existence.
General Gard, the discussion in Baghdad about the status of U.S. troops in Iraq, that by 2011 the bulk, if not all, of the American troops will be withdrawn. Is that a realistic assessment, given the fact that American troops are still being killed and the bombing has reverted back to Iraq as recent as the last 2 weeks?
Well, if the Iraqi government wants the troops out by 2011, they should be out. We have said right along that when we are asked to leave, we will leave. It appears that the Maliki government has increased confidence in its ability to handle the situation. It's very clear that a large majority of the Shia and Sunni in Iraq want American troops out. And so I believe that if Mr. Maliki continues with his present position, we should be out by 2011.
Wafiq Al-Samaarai, the recommendation elevated by Petraeus to President Bush told him, in order to protect the gains, we cannot accelerate the withdrawal. And yet, Senator Obama, he's on record saying that if he becomes a president, he is willing to overrule commanders on the ground for the benefit and overall picture, meaning Iraq and Afghanistan. If the next General Oderno might says, Mr. President Obama, keep the troops, he might say, no, no, no. The bigger battle, the best battle actually is Afghanistan. How do you look at that?
There is a very fine balance that should be taken into consideration. First, the security condition in Iraq is still frail, and any sudden withdrawal with troops will result in shocks, and America will lose all the gains in one shot. On the other hand, the presence of U.S. troops in Iraq has resulted in a true defect in the overall strategy. In other words, the United States has lost its initiative among the international community in relation to Afghanistan, also in relation to Iran. It wouldn't be able to take any form of strategic deterrence against Iran to stop its nuclear programs, simply for the reason that Iran would like to see an intensified American presence in Iraq. And according to these conflicting factors, I believe that speeding up or expediting the degree of withdrawal should be gradual and proportionate. It would be beneficial to the U.S. strategy, and it will be also a deterrence to the policy of threat to Iran.
When we come back, I'm going to ask Ilyas Hanna whether national reconciliation is a key ingredient for the success of stability of Iraq. Stay with us.
We must win in Iraq. If we withdraw, there will be chaos, there will be genocide, and they will follow us home. John McCain, Republican presidential candidate.